As many Kenyans are probably aware, the question of secession is taking center stage in our country following the rigging of the 2017 elections, in which a computer fundamentally voted and delivered leaders to the people of Kenya. What are some of the processes that are necessary for a people to secede from a country? One, there can be no secession without grounds for such a move. The top reason being advanced by the secessionists is basically the question of constitutional violation that has made it impossible for, other, members of the Kenyan community to ascend to positions of power. In the just concluded 2017 elections, Kenyans have witnessed a massive rigging of elections using a computer that basically voted different candidates and delivered senators, delivered governors, and most importantly, delivered the President of the Republic of Kenya. This has been contested in court, but one of the basic grounds is that the Constitution is no longer respected. If Raila Odinga, one of the most prominent politicians in Kenya, who has been a prime minister, who has led several democratic struggles in Kenya, and who is even responsible for the current new constitution after the abolition of the colonial constitution, cannot come to power because of rigging of elections, no other group or no other ethnic group can ascend to power in Kenya. Another ground is the monopolization of leadership within the government by specific communities, in this case, members of the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin community. The constitution that was agreed upon in 2005 is not working. It is not being respected. It is being violated by a group of people who are exploiting their control of the state machinery to get their way, not just in government, but also during elections. Another factor in any secessionist movement, the second factor in this case, is support. It is basically impossible for any movement or a group of people to secede without support. And in the case of Kenya, there is support across the provinces, with Nyanza province leading the pack in secession. We have seen Western province are in the map that has been floated. The, Eastern province, the Kambas. We have seen the Coast province in its entirety. Northwestern Kenya, with the Turkana being in the port of the secessionist movement. We have seen parts of the Rift Valley. So it can, safely be concluded that there is basic support for secession based on the geographical arithmetic of political support in the 2017 election, the support represented by the NASA coalition. The third factor is whether there are legal procedures, where there are legal provisions that could facilitate such a process. And the answer is that there is. If we look at the African Charter of Peoples and Human Rights that was enacted in 1986, it is very, very clear that a group of people have a right to separate themselves, to secede from a country if there is, valid reasons of doing so. And this was under the African Commission on Peoples and Human Rights. Article 20 is very clear that a people have the right to self-determination. Self-determination is just another word for secession. To chart their political future, to chart their political status, to chart their economic and social development if they feel that whatever formation they are in is not delivering. This forms the legal basis for secession. The Kenyan Constitution, of course, does not allow for the country to be broken up. And of course, there is no country that has a constitution that legally, allows members to break up. Otherwise, people would be breaking up every day. A fourth provision for any secessionist movement is, of course, an agreement. And when we come to this issue of agreement, there are two levels of agreement. The first level is whether the different communities seeking to secede, in this case, the NASA fraternity, have agreed to secede. And since this issue of secession is indirectly being brought up by forces linked to NASA, it can be assumed that there will be an agreement. It is not yet official because we are just at the debate level, but there must be an agreement. Another level of agreement will have to happen at the governmental level. That is, it is possible to have a peaceful secession. It has happened before. It is possible for the NASA leadership to sit down with the Jubilee or the central government to sit down and discuss and agree that, well, because of this and that, reasons mentioned, we don't feel that we can be, part of the Republic of Kenya. But from experience, the national government is unlikely to agree to such a proposal. The fifth element of, the process of seceding is the question of leadership. Whether there is a leadership that is ready to take up this issue. And in the case of Kenya, there is a ready-made leadership in the form of NASA. The NASA fraternity is seen to be behind the secession debate. And this is normal. If we assume that Raila Odinga is positioning himself to be the leader of this movement, then we are talking about a very serious development in our country, because Raila Odinga is not just an ordinary Kenyan. Now, once the question of leadership is resolved, the sixth factor will be the setting up of a flag to act as a symbol of the new state. And I think that I've seen some flag being floated around online. So it could be, probably official, it could be unofficial, it could be some online activist, some blogger who is playing around. But there is a flag in circulation along with a map in circulation. And let us remember that one of the key NASA, insider, David Ndii, has gone out in the media and supported the question of secession. He said that this thing needs to be discussed. He said that at one point, if we don't discuss it, it will come up. He said that if it doesn't come by the ballot, it will come by the bullet. He was really, talking revolution. That is the secessionist revolution. Once the flag is set up, the next issue that comes up is the tactics to be used by the secessionist movement. A political wing of the secessionist movement will have to be set up to address the politics of secession, to discuss, do the diplomacy, discuss with the central government. But then the process might fail. We have been informed from the media and from NASA sources that NASA is going to call mass action. Mass action is just one process or one method of seceding. Mass action might fail. And the known methods that have ever worked when mass action fails, when diplomacy fails through the political wing of the movement, brings us to the 8th factor, the military wing of the secessionist movement. So while the political wing will be doing the talk, the negotiations, the discussions, the debates on TV and so forth, the military wing will have to be ready to intervene if the talks are not working. Because without a military wing, you cannot secede when the central government says no. Since the central government is armed, there will have to be a war. It won't be a civil war, because civil war is between two different ethnic groups or different ethnic groups fighting each other for some unknown reasons. It will be called a secessionist war, if we ever get there. And talking about 10 million plus people seeking to secede, there is an endless supply of soldiers to be trained. The military wing will mainly be concerned with recruiting, soldiers, training them, then of course acquiring arms clandestinely, and then eventually arming the trained soldiers, and then putting them on the battlefield to fight the government. This is, where we might be heading if we don't negotiate this thing out. So, Wakenya, you really have to be prepared for this thing. It is not as easy as it seems. It might mean war in Kenya, where, those who don't want to be ruled from the mountain are seeking to free themselves from this oppression. Regardless of whether the secessionist movement succeeds through negotiation or through military intervention, the end result should be that the country has been separated and that there is a new state, and this new state will declare its independence, then seek recognition from the United Nations. And at that point, it will not matter whether the United Nations recognize that state or not. This is where we are heading to. It won't be possible to stop this. So it would be better to discuss whether we have Kenya with a constitution to be respected, where the winner of an election takes over power, or we split up Kenya. This is where we are heading to, whether you like it or not. This thing will have to be peaceful through a discussion on the table or through an armed struggle. When the ballot fails, the bullet takes over, because the Bible is never able to help under the circumstances. You will be hearing much from us given the political developments taking place in Kenya. And thank you very much for taking your time to watch this episode. I'm your presenter, Okoth Osewe. Thank you.